Okay, hello, hello, hello. We'll do that thing where we wait until the people get in. Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brave New North. My name is Sean Conway, and this is our special post-NDP convention stream. We got a lot of great guests coming in to talk about what's been going on over the last little bit, particularly the last 2 days. We may do a stream tomorrow. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. It's been a long day for a lot of people. So first up, thanks everyone for joining in. And if you could give us a like and a subscribe, it really helps us in what we do and trying to create like left media spaces for folks to come and talk about what's going on. And seeing as NDP convention is kind of like our Super Bowl, we've got a bunch of really cool folks coming in. We're going to kind of do shifts through the night because there's a lot of people and I'm not sure how many can actually fit on the panel. How's the sound out there for folks? I'm getting a little bit of something, but it just might be these headphones, which have seen better days. So yeah, give us a like, give us a subscribe. We generally stream every Saturday night. We've had great guests on and it's kind of a good mix of folks tonight. So with that, I think we'll pull in. Okay, sounds good. Thanks, everybody. I just got a bunch of chats in. There's already a challenge to the chair. We will not be entertaining that today. I'm going to pull in our first two guests. We've got Shailene Panylo, who is seeking the nomination for the federal NDP in the riding of Oshawa, and as well as Dhananjai Kholi, who is running to be the NDP president. And we should have other people joining in shortly. Hi, everybody. Happy second day of convention.
C minus, C plus 2, C minus 2? It's like Rick plus 1 at this point. You know, can I just say, I thought online convention would be like less tiring. I am exhausted. And even yesterday, for some reason, I was exhausted by the end of the day.
Yeah, I feel pretty worn out myself. How are you feeling, Shailene? Shailene and I were talking just before we came on.
I feel like my brain just had the longest pause ever. When I heard you say that you're tired, I was like, tired. That's a very nice way to put it. I'm good. Today was a very eventful day. It was an interesting day for sure, but one more day.
I think there's a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, for all that it was, it happened. We can say that. DJ, how was your day?
You know, I spent a lot of time in Zoom waiting rooms, which was not terrible because like when you were in the waiting room, like you could see other people, and so it was actually nice to be able to see other folks. And it was funny because we were all sort of like nobody knew how the system worked, and so we weren't sure if it was like a hot mic situation. And so everybody was really like, nobody went off mute, but we were all really excited to see each other because that was probably the most energizing portion of like actually seeing a human face versus just sort of like interacting with convention in the digital way. But yeah, no, I mean, it's been a long day. I think that there's definitely some issues. I'm glad to see that the party recognized some of them and has fixed some of them. Like when I was just chairing the Racial Justice Committee, and we had closed captioning or a form of closed captioning as well as translation. So I'm glad to see that they were able to fix that. It shouldn't have been a problem to begin with. This is sort of 101. Accessibility should be sort of basic to us. And I know that in the past we've never had ASL, QSL, and CC and stuff in committees and caucuses, but that's the whole point. We need to do better, and especially in this format, we need to do better. So I saw somebody point out on Twitter, and I don't know who they are. So if somebody does know, just put it in the chat. They said that if audio had cut out in one of the committee rooms, then we would have obviously stopped the meeting to fix it before we continued. And that sort of really rung true to me in terms of like the issues that we'd had with accessibility. So that's been sort of the big highlight for me. I'm glad that the party's fixing it. Shouldn't have been a problem in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's, where I come from, we call that Bush League. And I think there were a lot of really obvious things that may have just been, overlooked, obviously, or there was definitely some technical aspects that maybe folks weren't ready for. I don't know what the process was. I don't know who developed the software. I don't know who developed the program and put it together. Who knows? But it's obviously that something messed up. And it's not a great time. And I think, basics for New Democrats has to be accessibility, and it has to be, making sure that things are working. I'm going to pull in some more guests. We have Brandon Rheal Amyot, who's the EDA president at Barrie Springwater or Madani, and Angieszka Mlynarz, who is my partner and was the 2018 candidate in Guelph, and also ran for mayor of Guelph in that municipal election in 2018. So it's a family affair here on the show. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Honey, good evening. I'm glad to see that someone else brought their beaded earrings too.
Thanks to my mother-in-law.
What were we talking about just before we entered?
We were talking about the accessibility challenges and how it was really unacceptable, and Bush League. That's what we were talking about.
Well, it's interesting. I was in the I keep wanting to call it the Disability Justice Commission. I know that it's the Persons Living with Disabilities Commission. It was funny, or it's not funny. It's sad because before it even started, we were kind of taking bets on it's sad. We were taking bets and we were saying want to bet that this commission, just like the rest, will not have any accessibility features. And unfortunately, that proved true. And we ended up as a commission, as all the members that were present, we decided we were going to postpone our meeting until we could resolve at least closed captioning. So it'll be happening tomorrow instead of when it was supposed to happen. But it doesn't. And the other unfortunate thing is that at the same time that will be happening tomorrow will be the same time that the Emergency Resolutions Committee will convene to review all of the emergency resolutions. So anyone who potentially needs to, be on hand from, say, the Person Living with Disability Commission to try and provide motivation for why this is an emergency might have to find some accomplices or some way to communicate that with the committee members. So it's just kind of frustrating. And obviously, the committee couldn't have foreseen that. The committee was planned for that time to begin with. It was just so happened that was when the time got moved. But I don't know. It's just it's not like this is, I imagine, I've never been to a federal convention. This is my first convention. I have been to a provincial one, and there were some accessibility issues at that one as well, here in Ontario. But it's just like we've been in this pandemic now for 13 months. I thought we would have had a bit more planned out. And like I recognize that maybe priorities were split between, potential coming election and this convention. But when a convention hasn't happened for 3 years, I think that this should have just taken a bit more of a priority, and like due diligence has to be done, and it's not like, and I think the point I heard when I was coming in, I think DJ was saying it, is like, it's true. Like there have been points where someone's mic wasn't working or there was someone freezing and they're like, oh, we'll take a pause until we've resolved the issue. At no point during this convention when there has been an issue with accessibility otherwise, closed captioning, ASL, QSL, have we actually taken a pause. Typically there's an apology, which is something. And I get, everyone's behind the scenes is, working under pressure, but it's just like, we're on day 2. I thought like over the time that passed from day 1 to day 2, we might have resolved some of that. Because like closed captioning is an example with Zoom. There are some really easy services that like cost very little that you could have implemented right away, I'm sure. So I was just kind of surprised that when day 2 hit, that wasn't resolved. We'll see about day 3. I don't know, but it's just like, it has, as a young, disabled, two-spirit queer person, has inhibited my ability to participate in this convention. Not that I was going to like speak very often anyway, because there's like 2,000 people in the room, but it's just like, it is something we can't just like set aside. Not to say that anyone is doing that, but it's just like, it has to be like front and center concern, because that if you don't have people participating equitably, do you really have democracy functioning within a supposedly grassroots party? Not to be a Debbie Downer. I realize that there's some really exciting things happening too, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say this.
I didn't say what kind of vibes we would be having tonight. It would be all the vibes will be happening. And I think it's good to look at both the good and the bad vibes from today. Let's just look to the chat for a second. Or actually, before we do that, DJ, you were at a commission meeting after the main plenary. Had they resolved those issues?
Yeah, so at the Racial Justice Committee, or Racial Justice Caucus, they had translation, they had closed captioning, not perfect closed captioning, but a good effort, as well as a feature that was asked for this morning in the Ontario Caucus, which was to provide summaries, to have staff provide summaries of what folks are saying in the chat. So, I mean, I wish that this stuff had come in this morning. But there is definite progress. Like, folks did absolutely move towards fixing it. It shouldn't have been a problem in the first place. This is again 101. But I was glad to see that folks were recognizing it, and it was going just beyond sort of recognizing. It was like, let's figure out solutions for this. And I wasn't in YND, but I believe YND also had versions of that. But I just heard that sort of anecdotally.
Well, at least that's good that hopefully those issues can be resolved for tomorrow, for if there are any more commissions tomorrow or any breakout sessions that happen. There are a couple of, actually, here's a call to action here in the chat from Jay Woodruff. If my emergency resolution is tabled, will someone talk on it, as I need to be at the Disability Commission as I'm running for co-chair. So in the chat there, folks, if anyone can reach out to Jay for some help, that would be really, really appreciated. A comment here from Alyssa from Peterborough Kawartha. Can we talk about how the virtual format allowed for more democratic engagement in prioritization and secret ballot votes? I would give a point to that for sure, because I think opening the prioritization to all registered delegates was a good thing. I think it was on, I forget whose thread it was, maybe Nora Loretto and Vikita were talking on Twitter about how you could even further push that, kind of how Quebec Solidaire does it with the amendments voted by members and writing associations prior to convention. Does anyone want to talk to that the virtual format allowed for more democratic engagement in prioritization and secret ballot votes?
Well, I'd be
Aggie?
willing to say one thing. I was at the federal convention, the last one that took place, and it's come up a number of times because, as you can see today, the event is so squished together that as soon as something happens in the scheduling, which requires attention and it gets pushed back, it's really hard to reschedule it. So I know there was conversations around should convention be longer, but then of course you run into issues like how many people can be away and can afford to pay that from say Tuesday to Sunday, which is, you know, like a bit of it is a financial commitment to do so, to be there in person. So the conversation did come up, would the NDP benefit by making it a virtual event or in part virtual? And there was quite a bit of strong pushback from certain members of the party to say like, absolutely not, we can't do that. So it's really interesting that given a pandemic and the fact of how we've had to change our interactions, that this convention did happen virtually. So I think that there is kind of like a success story there, especially in the future in terms of certain conventions. Can we do them 50-50? Some people might want to show up in person. Maybe other people would prefer to do it virtually. So I think it's an interesting conversation that is definitely probably going to come and happen again in the future. But certainly I think that this was a bit of a success in terms of saying to the naysayers 3 years ago that, yes, it is possible and it can be done.
I think that's I think it's a good point. I don't know if we're at the point where we're calling it a success story, but I think we can see like how it could work. And I think tomorrow is the day when we'll really see that if it really, really can work. I think there has to be a bit of a move away from business as usual with how we do conventions if we're going to approach it in a virtual setting. And I think that means we're not looking at the constitutional rules. We're looking at a separate set of rules about the time that folks need. But that's my opinion. Does anyone want to take and run with that idea?
Yeah, the democratization portion, right, where like the resolutions prioritization being moved to digital and having all delegates being able to access that. I think that that's definitely like a +7 at least for me. I think, you know, this is something that I would hope is going to stay. If not, it absolutely should stay. I've been to those panels in the morning where we do prioritization. They're brutal. You know, just the process itself excludes so many folks. So this system of letting folks, you know, be able to access the resolutions in advance, be able to sort of talk with other writing associations and have that conversation in advance, and then allowing all delegates 24 hours to be able to vote on that. I think that is absolutely a move in the right direction. We need, you know, it comes out of that resolution that came up last convention. I think it was very much needed at that time too, the democratization. But yeah, I think this is a success. This is definitely a success of this convention, that our resolutions are actually ranked by delegates and by all delegates, not just delegates who can, you know, show up at 6:30 in the morning at a panel and rush the mic, right? So that, I think, that part I think was definitely a plus.
Yeah, you know, I would say you could even push it even further. And maybe I'm a bit, you know, optimistic, but I think you could even extend prioritization to all membership and then continue still to have your delegated system of convention to, especially with a virtual format. But you could invite all membership to prioritize resolutions. And then you could have like member movements and EDA associations and campaigns within the party to actually advocate for different policy resolutions through for the convention floor. So say, you know, I don't know. What do you think, Shailene?
Ooh, so many thoughts. I would agree. I think maybe I'm a little bit more of the Debbie Downer, but watching the chat and, chatting with people all day today, have to shout out my Oshawa peeps. Hi, Alden. I see Scott too in the chat. But I really do think that a move towards having a hybrid virtual convention, yes, is the right move for us to make as a party, especially for convention, which, as you had said earlier, is like our Super Bowl. It's a big deal. And it is one of the single most attractive things, or should be, for people to want to get involved and have more of a say and see their values and their local issues really given the time of day and an opportunity and some sort of platform and stage. But I would have to agree that I think I have to be real, that I think that this has really put a lot of people off, that the immense number of oversights has really, really shaken people up with their desire to want to participate. And I think that's been very clear, not only if you're listening to plenary and people raising points of order literally all day about how inaccessible things have been, but also online in our virtual spaces, our social media spaces. And I think it would be disingenuous to sit here and say, this has been fantastic, because the concept is, but the execution was not well done. And I think I would like to see the party take this as an opportunity to say, you know what, we made a lot of mistakes. We looked over a lot of different things. Perhaps we underestimated the sheer amount of work that actually has to go into doing something of this magnitude online for 2,000 plus delegates. And that's okay. I think it's better for us to admit to our shortcomings and our wrongdoings and our oversights and take accountability and apologize for them, and then take those steps and say, here's what we're going to do next time to make it up to you. And one of those things be addressing the fact that exactly, the cost barrier was huge. People paid minimum $100 to sit in Zoom rooms for 45 plus minutes. And that has got to be so infuriating, especially when we know New Democrats make up some of the most powerful community organizers, but often people who have for a long time been very marginalized. And so if we are not acknowledging that two-prong irony, we're not doing ourselves justice. So I think it's wonderful that people can participate in prioritization. I would love to see it open to membership, because why not? I don't think your opinion should be determined by whether or not you can get an easy code or pay the $99+ to attend. And it also gives EDAs an opportunity to do outreach, to bring their members together, to have amazing conversations before we even reach convention. Why wouldn't we want to create more spaces for our New Democrat folks to meet and chat? So I err on the side of caution of saying that this is all sunshines and rainbows, because it's quite frankly been a little bit of a train wreck. But I do think that what we decide to do collectively as a party, as a collective of progressives from this point on, is going to set the tone for how people want to interact with New Democrats moving forward. And that should be our number one focus, to enhance engagement, accessibility, and participation. Rant done.
I don't think so. I think it's really well articulated, and it's, I think, how a lot of us are feeling. And I think just trying to take a balanced approach is how I approach the situation, but I don't mean that discounts my own frustration. And there were a lot of things that I thought that were obstructive and could have been done better. And again, really exactly what has been said. The party has to take that and run with it and take these suggestions, and this is what needs to happen. And someone in the chat said the party can't take mess ups over the last 2 days and say, well, we'll never do online again, like it was bad. Like, no, the idea is really, really good, and just do it better. Because opening it up to so many different people is really, really good. You could have speakers in the evening. You could have, you could have whole sections of Zoom meetings set up, or I think it should be like a standalone software platform that operates, 24/7, 365, all EDAs run through it, all provincial councils, like a big investment into an online platform, which would be really, really good. But I think there's a lot of stuff. Jay, just for everyone tuning in, Jay's got his emergency resolution in the chat here. You can reach out to Jay on Twitter, and I think that's where I know Jay from. Jay's on Twitter. Jay, drop your Twitter handle in, and people can try and touch base with you tomorrow for assistance with your motion. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that the party can take and run with, and I think that that's a positive, but it doesn't mean that today was a great day for like a well-run convention. It was an okay run convention at the best of times, and that's okay. Like in it itself is okay. It's just about what happens after. That's right. Be the NDP at Be the NDP. That's Jay Woodruff. Brandon.
Yeah, first thing I wanted to say was about the process of like voting and prioritization. Like, let's be clear, that wasn't the party that did that. That was the membership of the 2018 convention who passed a resolution in which one of the items was about democratizing the way that we prioritize resolutions. So it's not to say the party didn't do it. It's to say that like it wasn't their brainchild, so to speak. It was the membership's brainchild, or the people's brainchild. Was it done perfectly? No. I had a lot of I just had a lot of challenges with the portal that we used, but it got done ultimately. I think I think the bigger kind of question is like we need to rethink how we do convention, and we need to rethink decision making within party. Like we're still like the idea of convention is something that's been around for like a century. Why are we still, doing that? I don't know. It's like, I think to Sean's point, trying to find a more year-round way to do this, maybe having a time like it's fun to gather together. And I think having a hybrid format is good. I know the Ontario NTP is looking at a potential hybrid format for they're possibly having their convention in November. That's like the booked date, but it could end up getting pushed depending on things. But I know they're looking at a bit of a hybrid format, sort of like how, the Parliament of Canada is functioning right now. And some people have said that Parliament should actually maintain that structure to some degree, because it means that people throughout the country can participate. So if Parliament can do it, like certainly our party could figure it out. Does the party have the same resources as Parliament? Maybe not, but we need to figure out something, because like, you have to have a good process. The ends don't justify the means, in the sense like, it's all well and good that we have Hockey Night in Canada ads airing, and it's all well and good that there's tons of media coverage about conventions. But if the actual membership isn't benefiting from the convention and it's only the media coverage that's benefiting, like who is it for in the end? So it's like, I think we put the cart before the horse in some respects. In a sense, it's being the convention is very well produced, not internally, but like externally. And I think some people can definitely sense, like we've seen media covering it, that there's some a lot of challenges. But we shouldn't have production get in the way of like a genuine conversation that's supposed to happen through the policy process. So maybe kind of moving to more of a year round, plus having a maybe more frequent big gathering where it's a hybrid format would allow for a more 21st century vision of how a party works together. Yeah, and like we have all the people who are in this call. We have there's a private chat, and someone mentioned a really good point. I'll let them say it because I think it's a good point. So
I think you might have to name names, Brandon. There's a lot happening in
Oh,
the
I didn't
private
want to put you
chat.
on the spot. DJ, I just thought that was a really good point about the environmental impact, and I think Shailene also made that point about that. So if you want to speak about that a bit, maybe explain to folks, I think it's a good point.
Oh gosh, me just blah blahing in the me just blah blahing in the chat. Sorry. For folks wondering, we were just chatting about Brandon had said something great about Parliament keeping the hybrid. And then I had mentioned we also save money not flying MPs out from across the country all the time, but then the environmental impact is less, right? Less need for transportation, equal participation. And what does that mean for what a candidate can look like? I think that opens a whole world of possibilities that we don't often get to see. And I would personally love to see more people participate who don't have to think about, you know, is it going to be hard on me, my body, my family, my situation to have to travel to Ottawa all the time or wherever. If we're talking convention, it doesn't even matter. I think, you know, having hybrid models has shown us that accessibility is so critical, and we can do it, and we can definitely do it better. I think the youth convention proved that, but you know, it does. It opens a door, and it also lessens the environmental impact that we make. So yeah, lots of good. Trying to be positive.
Well, I was gonna say, I really like, Brandon, what you were talking about, right? Because like I think part of my understanding at least is that the idea of convention and the way we do it comes from the way labor does conventions, right? And I think especially in 2021 we need to figure out like what is the purpose of convention, right? Because frankly, if the purpose of convention is to pass policy, it's a pretty shitty model, right? Like, I mean, it's, you know, frankly speaking, this is the cheapest convention that the party's ever had, right? And it's already expensive, right? Like there's no travel costs, there's no hotel costs. Like convention gets expensive, right? On top of being able to take the time off and stuff like that. So if the purpose of convention is policy and policy discussion and engagement, is this the best model for it? I don't necessarily think so. But I think it goes back to what is the purpose of convention, right? Like, is maybe convention becomes a space where it's more about training and engagement and creating sort of those relationships between EDAs, and we move the policy into the online space, or we move it into sort of a regional model or something like that, right? I think we have to think about sort of you know, so Labour in the UK, for example, they have this really great model that they've tried now, where for policy, it's basically like a Reddit, right? All the policies get submitted, folks can upvote, downvote, and put comments, and it's open for like an extended period of time. And so then by the time you get to convention, a significant amount of the work has already been done. And so then their convention focuses predominantly on training, on letting people be able to meet each other. Because like that's the one thing I will say I miss the most about this convention is like I was joking, like it's all the shitty parts of convention without like the fun parts. Like you know, like seeing your friends from across the country, folks you haven't seen in years, being able to just sort of like get those 10 minutes outside and just say, you know, just catch up. None of that is there, right? And like that's actually for me always been the best part of convention. And so, you know, I think there does need to be sort of this like larger think of like, why do we do this? Are we just doing it because it's what we've always done? Because that's not a good enough reason, right? Like, it's not a good enough reason to get members to spend this much money. It's not a good enough reason to put this much effort into it. Like, I'm sure even staff would rather just be like doing something else if we're just doing it for the sake of doing it, right? So I think that coming out of this, I think we've seen now that online options are possible, definitely with lots of improvements. But I think it goes larger than that. And it says, let's not just take sort of the framework of convention that exists currently and just try and transpose it into a Zoom meeting, right? Like, let's actually look at what are we trying to accomplish through convention, right? And I think if we actually do that in a really thorough way, talking to folks and engaging with folks, and like, it has to be a big sort of consultative thing because it's not just one person making this decision. But I think if we actually do it in a good way, I think we can come out of this with different models that allow us to engage with members, and allow members to engage with each other and activists to engage with each other in a more sort of meaningful way.
Those are all great points. Thanks, TJ. We'll ping it over to Aggie, who had some things to add to this as well.
Yeah, because I think another problem with when we're talking about convention and the way that it's always been done, and that the model that currently happened over the last couple of days has been one that's been very much so a result of the pandemic. And when we look at previous conventions, another big issue is its location, the physical location, because when it happens in, say, the last place was Ottawa, there's that hometown advantage where you can flood convention with Ottawa delegates, with Toronto delegates, to push through the issues that they want seen or that they want addressed. And again, as we've seen, that time frame of convention is so tiny, and it gets so overwhelming with what gets discussed and what doesn't, that often folks from other provinces are almost awashed, or their issues get thrown off to the side because they just don't have the manpower there. Because again, like flying across Canada is more expensive than flying to Europe. Depending on the cost, it's they can go upwards of $3,000. So that kind of financial accessibility to other provinces, or to anyone, depending on the physical location of actual convention, is a significant deterrent to have that participation. And it's important to think, especially on a federal level, we want to hear those other voices in those other provinces. And no matter where, and this is no matter where physically convention takes place, there's always going to be somebody who's on the end of a $3,000 ticket to get there. And that's a huge problem that I think definitely has been sort of discussed before, but should come more to the forefront now with this new sort of model that kind of happened over the last few days.
I think those are great points, Aggie. I think I'll just put it out there then that this show will run convention next time, and it'll be just fine because I have all the answers, and it's going to be okay. But we're going to move in. We're going to bring some more folks in. We have, correct me if you're not nominated yet, we have former and possibly current Toronto Centre NDP candidate Brian Chang, and as well as Trent University professor in political science Brandon Tozzo coming into the stream. We're going to see how it works. Does that look? Hey, look at all the heads on the screen. Brandon Tozzo, you may know on Twitter as being one of the two Brandons who are NDPers, Brandon Amyot and Brandon Tozzo. Brandon Tozzo is the one who does the Simpsons memes and founded a online disinformation company called Game Changers.
We were told by the CBC we're ruining society, and I stand by that. Just destroying democracy one meme at a time. Hi, Brandon, especially the other Brandon. We always have a debate of who's the better Brandon, and I always say he is the better Brandon. I am tier 2 on this conversation. It's nice to meet everybody. I think I've met most people. DJ, we've met before at Eastern Council. Nice to see you. Aggie, first time. Brian, pleasure. And Shailene, you're from Oshawa. Represent. I teach at Trent Durham as well. So my heart goes down. I love Oshawa. Big fan of the Schwa or Pashwa.
And Brian Chang, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's great to be here. It's been let's be clear. It's been a hard 2 days. It's been emotionally taxing. It's been mentally taxing. I think it's been spiritually very taxing for a lot of people, and in not some good ways. And unfortunately, we don't have the balance of being able to like check in on each other and give each other hugs and just exit the room if we're feeling really stressed out, right? And then just check in with each other, get each other food, and whatnot. So I think it's the isolation has been the hardest thing for me because it often feels sometimes like I'm in a room screaming by myself, and I think a lot of you are probably feeling that way as well too. And it's been challenging. So one thing that really got me kind of recentered back again was that I actually took a bike ride down to helping out at St. Lawrence Market, which I do every Saturday to help sign up seniors for vaccines and help them access a food bank that we set up with Spadina Fort York Community Cares. And I think that was really, really important for me to kind of reset and be like, this weird toxic thing that's going on with convention is not it's not everything at this moment. And I think that was important. So I just want to make sure that everybody is doing the best they can to take care of their spiritual, emotional, mental, physical health over the course of this, because it's a lot, and everything that you're feeling is valid. And I want to make sure that we're creating space to have those discussions.
Yeah, and welcome to the fray, Brian. We've had a couple of discussions, and I think you had said something in the chat that I wanted to go back to. Yeah, Brian, I think there's a better way that we can look at resolutions that are prioritized. And, if they reach a certain threshold of points, say, or endorsements from EDAs, or something like that. Is there a way that we can almost automate that so that we do have our ultra popular resolutions with, 50 EDA supports and, 10,000 points, say? Is there a way that we can just, oh, well, that's the policy now?
Mm-hmm.
And it just sort of gets affirmed at the convention.
Yeah, and I think that's important because, as we can see from the overwhelming amounts of votes that we've had on these issues, they're not controversial when it comes down to the issue themselves. We're having problems getting to have the discussion, but when it actually comes to the substance of what New Democrats stand for, I think the overwhelming support we've seen for these issues shows that we are all on the same side in many cases, and that's really important and an important message to take. It's this process that we're working through. And I come from a labor background. I come from student organizing. So DJ and I know each other from student organizing. And this has been a problem since as long as I've been in university. It doesn't matter whether you're in a student union having a discussion with like 20 people, or in a convention with 2,000 people, or digital. These are complicated, weird beasts. People use procedure in weird ways. There are lots of procedural fetishists out there whose only goal is to do procedure. They're into procedure. Procedure is what gets them off. They're going to play around with procedure, obstruct, get in the way, point of privilege, point of order, whatever it is. This also happens at labor unions as well, too. But one thing I was thinking through in the chat, just kind of while everybody else was thinking through what else could we possibly do, is what happens if there is agreement? Like, what happens if we have 50 riding associations that are saying the same thing? Does that then need to be discussed in convention to take time away from issues that we should? And actually, this prioritization actually made me think differently about what I was prioritizing. I was actually thinking, do we want to prioritize the things that New Democrats are already talking about? Or do we want to start to have a conversation about things like decriminalizing sex work, so that we can start to have a discussion about the things in which we need to move the party towards, and which we don't have a very clear policy objective or policy goal or no, or to very clearly mark something in the ground that says, this is what makes us New Democrats, and this is where the other parties fall short. And I think there are far too many issues that are like that we're just not even getting into, because we're stuck having the same conversations kind of over and over again. And I think that has happened in the past, and there's always these kinds of issues like LTC, super important right now. We need to have those discussions. We need to demonstrate to Canada, to people, to our loved ones, our families, the workers, people working in front lines, the general public, that this is an important issue. New Democrats take it seriously. But there are always these issues that kind of come up around convention, in which we are talking and spending lots of energy saying the same thing several times over and over again, over and over again, over and over again. And then it makes me wonder what the value of something like that is if we could just pass a policy and all get behind it, and have it buy-in from different ridings.
No, those are great points, Brian.
Can I jump in real quick?
Please, DJ.
So I'm almost there with you, Brian. I'm not there fully. I think that there is value. So, like for example, for issues that affect communities that haven't traditionally been represented in the NDP, I think that there is some value to having a limited number of speakers. Maybe we're talking about just a couple of speakers. I agree that there's a lot of repetition that ends up happening. I spent a lot of time in waiting rooms and on resolutions that I thought would hit the floor, and we didn't get to 2 in some places or 3. I think that there is some value in like having maybe the mover or some person or like one person. I think like for example when I have a resolution, shameless plug here, folks, but a resolution around creating a VP equity position to better support our equity seeking caucuses coming up tomorrow. And I think that there is some value in terms of getting sort of one person to speak on it. But I agree. Like I think that having 3 people speak in favor, 3 people speak against, but all 3 that speak against are just saying this resolution doesn't go far enough, is just like, why are we doing this, right?
Fair point. Does anyone want to jump on that? Oh, also, like, don't feel free to like not wait your turn. Just jump in if you think I'll break it up here and there and call on people that I haven't heard from in a while. But this is not an interview. We're an unsanctioned gathering of various new Democrats, and Robert's rules do not apply to this show.
I call privilege.
Denied.
Reclaiming my time.
Yeah.
I challenge the chair.
Please, no.
That's another thing that we need to seriously talk about, right? Like the weaponizing of Robert's rules to push like a certain agenda forward, like that is a thing that happens. And like, I mean, there was 2 panels today where we spent more time talking about talking than we actually talked about resolutions, right? Like we very much need to talk about like people who use and misuse Robert's rules, and weaponize it, frankly, as the way to like, push a certain agenda forward.
But DJ, how much of that is intentional? Like, I mean, how much of that is just that we don't want certain resolutions addressed and we want to make sure that we monopolize too much time and we're waiting out the clock? Like, that happens at almost every convention I've ever gone to. It's the more like awkward resolutions get pushed to the end. Like, I know defund the RCMP is not going to be addressed. And most of the controversial stuff is near the bottom of the resolution list. This happens, and that it's clearly intentional by whomever organizes the resolution. So I think that that's fairly obvious, and it's talking it to death. And so, I mean, it's a product of its own intention, I think.
Yeah, and also it's really discouraging too. If it's the first time you've gone to convention, maybe you're somebody who joined the party like within the last year, you're told that this is an exciting event to go to. You're going to meet lots of young new Democrats or new Democrats in general, people who are like-minded, and then you walk into one of those rooms and that's what you're met with, and it can be very discouraging to want to continue to participate on any level in the party. And it's something to consider that when we're bringing in new members, when we're bringing in new folks from all kinds of backgrounds, that environment can feel very hostile. And it's definitely, Robert's rules is a type of language that it's not taught. Like, it isn't taught in any kind of democratic sense. It's not present at all in the educational system unless you choose to pursue those avenues of higher education that are very expensive and very challenging to get into, such as being a lawyer. So I think it's important to consider that in using those rules, is there a way that we can, if we're going to stick to them, is there a way that we can teach them? Is there a way that we can hand out information or give access to new members or new people who are doing convention for the first time that, hey, by the way, we do this. Here's a really fun booklet on how it works. because when you don't have that heads up, it's jolting, and it might actually jolt people totally away from the process, which is, that's losing voices, that's losing individuals. So I think it is something to consider for sure.
I'm gonna jump in. So I've had a lot of experience kind of thinking through different types of meetings, and I've been with meetings where we've tried kind of a decentralized, kind of democratized consent model for figuring out things. And there's also a certain amount of I can't think of the word, but like it's a certain amount of like when people you can weaponize not having a structure as well. You can weaponize having too much of a structure. It's hard to find a middle ground. But the one thing I would say about rules, or Borano's rules of order, which are actually I think what the Canadian Parliament follow, is that if these situations, if these rules are being followed, if the things like we're making sure that we had all gender representation in speaking, that people were giving equitable time, if that was all working, why do we keep seeing the same type of people at the mics every single time, over and over again, obstructing, getting in the way, whatever, whether they're there for their procedure fetish or whatever that they're interested in? I'm just curious as to why we can't seem to break out of that mold, and why we keep kind of trying to wiggle to try and figure it out. Like, it's clear that this is not working for people who do not have the language ability, who do not have, who have never been around a convention before, who do not know rules of order, that we shouldn't need to go to a training for hours or have years of experience in order to participate in our party's democratic process. And I think that that's kind of a really challenging point that we're at. There needs to be a certain amount of rule and kind of structure to what we're doing. And it was making me think today, some of the discomfort that I was having around the situation, and I think it has to do with kind of I come from labor, so I work in labor. And oftentimes when we are judging whether an employer is doing something correct or not, and we're challenging it with judicial review, there are three kind of measures that we have to look at. The first one is this arbitrary? Like, is it just coming out of nowhere? Is there a real rationale for this particular decision or the rule that we're trying to enforce? The second is it discriminatory? Are there specific people who will be disempowered by the use or not the use of this particular power or rule or whatever? And then the third is in bad faith. And is this particular action or item or whatever it is being done in bad faith? And if we look at kind of what's happening at convention right now and the way that people are feeling, if you look at the first two, is it arbitrary? Yes, to a large extent, especially what we saw with kind of whether you could call the vote from the mic, the con mic, after only one person has spoken, which is in contradiction to what we heard yesterday. So yes, arbitrary. Is it discriminatory? Does it prevent people from participating? Does it particularly target and exclude a certain segment of our party membership? Yes. But is it in bad faith? And I don't think that answer is yes. And I think that's kind of where that we can break it into those pieces. And I think that's been useful for me, because I don't think any big party is in bad faith trying to exclude or prevent people from participating. I think that we're failing on the arbitrary and the discriminatory piece on this. And that's kind of how I'm at, and how I'm trying to think through the kind of issues that we're having, so that we can start to work towards some kind of repair and fixing and making sure that we don't go back to this again in the future. And that has to do with these rules that people don't understand, and I don't understand, and keep changing, and stuff happens, and then another procedure comes up, and who knows? It's very complicated and very confusing.
Great point there, Brian. I think that's always a good thing to keep in mind, is that is looking out for good faith, bad faith. And I think that's a really good thing. Speaking of podcasts from your panel yesterday, Bad Faith Podcast, Brianna Joy Gray and Virgil Texas, very good listen. But I want to move on to something in response to some of the things we've been talking about. There was a comment from someone listening in that Robert's Rule is definitely a language that excludes, but what do you replace it with? And Brandon, Rheal, Amyot, you had a response to that I thought was going to be really interesting. So if we could hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think in truth, there's many different models we could use. Like, that's the short answer. the communities that I'm a part of usually use consensus-based decision-making models. I will say, and this kind of goes to the point that Brian made, it goes to the point that Sean made. I think it requires it requires a certain level of like some people. I'm trying to think of a nice way to put this, but I can't. Particularly settlers, I think, would have a challenge with consensus-based decision making. I think.
Yeah.
That's been my experience anyway. I think in the interim, what we definitely need is I find it very bizarre that there isn't workshops in the morning of the convention dedicated to an anti-oppression workshop, an actual one, not here's the terms, here's what they mean. It's practically what does anti-oppression look like in action? Two, how do we make decisions at a convention, and how can we give you the tools to be able to participate in this fully? That stuff has to happen before anything starts. I don't know if that happens at the convention space or if the party deploys people to each riding's delegates or something, or runs sessions beforehand on how to do that. But people actually have to have the knowledge, because I'm going to guess out of the 2,040 people that came to this convention, maybe 5% actually know Robert's rules. I don't know. That's obviously just a guess in the dark. But consensus-based decision-making seeks, well, it's just that. It seeks consensus along the way. Are there still amendments? Yes. And it'll seek, is there consensus on this amendment? What more to the point of, I think what Brian was saying is there are still ways that you have to, you have to find the solutions to how do we make sure it's not the same people always coming to the mic or whatever the case might be. Because even in any other model, there can be ways in which people are still disenfranchised. That's the case with any structure, that people can be disenfranchised. So it's constant work. And I think some of it has to start at a local level. Conversation needs to happen at the federal level, but what do our riding how do our riding associations make decisions? My riding association kind of sort of uses Robert's rules, but we're more just does everyone agree on this? Okay, good, we move on. Is there a dissenting opinion? Okay, how can we improve what's existing to incorporate the concerns that you've raised? Does everyone agree on that, addition that this person's made? Okay, good, we move on. So it's just obviously that works easier when it's a group of 5 or 10 people, but it can be done at a larger level. I think it's a cultural shift that kind of has to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the consensus-based decision model is something actually funny enough that I actually heard talked about on the CBC. And I'm not saying that all that I know about consensus-based decision-making comes from listening to CBC, but I had to do some driving late last night, and I was listening to CBC, and they're talking about there's this, he seems like a jerk, really, but this guy said that you can't really scale consensus, and you can't scale compassion. So I didn't really like that. But really what it comes down to is you can look at ways of making consensus work. There's a comment in here that this is why communalism, municipalism will always be stronger than models of distributing power in the party politics. I disagree with that, because you have to be able to put in the work of building consensus within a larger community. And that is on the onus of every member of the community to do that. So if you're to scale consensus-based decision-making from, say, an EDA, where you're sort of leaving behind what is simple majority and Robert's rules, and you're looking for a more open and free and consensus-based approach to governance, it's not necessarily just running a meeting, it's how you operate within an organization. Exactly, Jay makes a great point. You replace Robert's rules with mutual respect, and that's how you come into it. You come in good faith. And the idea is you're going to go in there, you're going to lay it all out, and when you come out of it, every single person is going to agree in a good faith result. And so not only are you getting to a result, which is always a good thing, because oftentimes with Robert's rules and simple majorities, you don't get results. you get people voting against something. It's like it's a bad system. So bringing in consensus models where people actually have to hash out, like, well, this is why I don't like it. You get rid of the entire argument on the floor of a convention being like, this does not go far enough and I hate it and I will never vote for it. It's gone because you say, hey, can we add this line into this? I think what we mean to say when we talk about this is this. And everyone says, oh, you know what? You're right. And this is a bit utopian because I like that. But there's ways that you can do decision making that is like really makes you feel good. It makes you feel a part of the team. Makes you feel part of a community. We're not a political party. We have to be a community. And I think that that's what Brandon's talking about. So just to give a bit more context in there, it's an awesome way to look at things. So if you're an EDA president, give it a try because it's chaos to begin with, but it can be really, really rewarding. I cede my time.
Do you?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Shailene.
No, I was just going to say I agree, and I think and I'd mentioned it in the chat, but for those who are watching, I think it is very odd that a party that is supposed to be labor, grassroots, community-based, for us to use such a system that, frankly, it's like presenting people with a locked door, and then expecting them to know how to use the key. And we really can't do that. And truthfully, it's subscribing to this very colonial way of structuring communication when, the origins of the NDP and, worker solidarity and power to the people, it has never come from beautifully structured meeting notes or following points of order. It's always come from, we all foresee a very common issue and we come to the table with a culture of, we're all very upset that there are so many problems that need to be dealt with, and we all collectively want a solution. And I think that in a lot of traditional cultures, most certainly, the Caribbean African diaspora, when you're looking at how histories are passed on, it is very oral. And when you flash forward a little bit more, when we have panels, people are properly trained moderators typically. Sean, you have this show and you are like a traffic director a little bit, right? You can help steer, you can help bring people in and make sure that everyone on this call and this panel is included. And there is something to be said for that. We all may have very different opinions. I may feel I'm a little bit more of a negative Nancy about my first federal convention experience, but at the end of the day, we all leave here wanting to see the party do better and wanting to see the important changes that we know have to be implemented come to fruition. And that's okay. So I think when you create that environment in a space like convention where it is less about tooting your own horn if you're a union leader or, taking up space and time, and it's more about the collective community-based communication and discussion that needs to happen, where, instead of having debate about whether or not a marginalized group feels like, for instance, defund the police needs to become part of our platform, people who aren't impacted by that should not be taking up space. If they don't understand it, or if their understanding is flawed and they therefore disagree with it, they should be able to ask questions, and we should be able to have honest conversation that isn't hostile, where I don't feel like I have to defend my identity and my experience when I'm telling you about why this is so important to me and why the language is as it is. And you may not like the language, but do you ultimately believe that, my safety and the safety of other Black, Indigenous, and LGBTQ2S+ folks in this country deserve that safety? Then okay, let's work on building out a piece of policy that we can all agree on that doesn't erase my voice, but also doesn't ignore the fact that we have different thoughts. And that is something that's possible. And so I think if we, and maybe I'll plug this a little bit for the future of the party, if we focus on having people that are trained to facilitate community-based discussions, whether it's as Brandon had suggested or something a little bit different, to help direct these and keep things on the same topic so that we're not jumping all over the place and everyone feels like they can participate even if they don't know Robert's rules or points of order, because we won't have to use them. Let's focus on the issue. Let's make sure that we've reached a point of where we're going to adopt it or not. And if people have concerns that are just, well, I don't like it, over concerns of it's okay. What's that action item? What would you like to see change? Don't just come with your complaints, come with solutions, come with building blocks. That's what we're all here to do. And I think if we change the culture and the expectation and we make that door a lot more accessible, then people are more likely to plug in, use that key, and want to come to the table. So I don't know. That's maybe it is utopian, but I think it's possible. And I think there's 1,001 cultures and people and histories in this world that can show us that this has been the reality for a very long time, and it can be a reality as a party.
Those are great points, Shailene, and thanks so much for sharing them with us. I want to go back down to Aggie, who had a couple of great points.
Well, just thinking from the conversation that was happening and something I said in the private group chat, which I agree with Brian Chang, that the use of Robert's rules, the language is performative, because it's almost like we're using them to prove that we're as legitimately electable as the conservatives or the liberals, that it's the language that we use that makes us a viable party to be elected to governance or to lead. But it's almost like a snake eating its own tail, because in using that language, we shut down and cut out so much of what is our party, which are those grassroots organizers, which are those voices that make us be more left and be more present in those issues. So for me, it's an interesting conversation that should definitely take more of a forefront, especially leading up to the next convention, is how much longer are we going to use this language? How are we going to adapt it? What are we going to do so that we're not, in a sense, in the inside, with all the leftists, and there's so much leftists inside fighting, of course, like that's a part of who we are. But why are we using a language that it's almost that we're not fighting with one another, we're almost shutting out whole parts of who we are and what makes the NDP matter to us? Why are we using a language that is not allowing us to fully realize the potential and ability we have as that community that we were discussing? So that's how I feel.
No, I think that's excellent. I think we're going to go back to DJ there.
While folks were speaking, I was just thinking about something. It sort of brought it up. I also think that the structure of convention in itself, and for Brandon and Brian, we were talking initially about, or earlier about, what does convention look like? Why do we do convention the way it is? And are there other alternate models, right? Because I think the structure of convention also sort of creates that sort of confrontational system. Some of us were working on the second resolution in the 5th panel, I want to say, about getting rid of the language around increased funding for the RCMP, right? And the first resolution about clean drinking water for Indigenous communities, that's super important. And I found myself at some point getting stressed, being like, yo, I need to get to my resolution, right? And it's almost like the two resolutions are now competing for a block of time. And I have a resolution, my writing association submitted a resolution that's at number 4 tomorrow. And, I'm now going to I'm going to be concerned about moving through the debate of the first 2 resolutions quicker, because I want to get to my resolution, when I don't necessarily think that these resolutions should be competing with each other for time. And I think, unfortunately, the structure of convention sets it up so that they're competing, and it's this linear sort of discussion. And when you spend time on one, you're taking away time from another. And so, we were talking earlier about alternate models of how we do policy. And I think one of it is this sort of like, we can all adapt, and we can all adapt different models that adopt different types of policy, but without having them compete against each other for a specific amount of time.
No, I think those are good points. I'm just gonna take a look over the chat and make sure that we're not missing anything.
I just want to say something really quickly. I think that
Please go ahead.
on the competition, I think that's so true. I think it's a false tension. It's only created, and we only have this tension between clean drinking water and whatever else, only in a convention. Because if we're having these discussions in any other kind of forum amongst New Democrats, I don't think there would be any tension amongst these issues whatsoever. So I think that is quite revealing of the way in which the system is creating our discomfort, and that our discomfort isn't inherent. It's very much a symptom of the system that we're going through, and I think that we should all be responsive to the fact that we all feel very uncomfortable, and that we have felt uncomfortable over the course of the last day and a half, and probably will be uncomfortable tomorrow as well too, because of this weird competition of resources and voices and people and labor and the youth and this group of people and this caucus and who gets to speak at what time, and whether they get 90 seconds or they get 2 minutes and whatnot. It's all very panic-inducing, very panic-inducing.
Yes, excellent. Sorry, I did want to give a shout out to Bothered Boy who's listening in. He runs a great channel over on YouTube, which we are on. What's Bothering Me Today? It's a great show on YouTube. He's here tonight, hanging out in the comment section. Hello, Bothered Boy. What was I going to bring up? And it was about something important, but oh yeah, it was just regarding how amendments can work. And speaking from someone that lives, works, and advocates for Indigenous communities, the amendment to the Boil Water Advisory resolution today was actually not very good, because it didn't account for fly-in communities. It didn't account for any of those other things. It was about like putting towards, when we line up to a municipality, but a municipality or provincial water authority has no jurisdiction over First Nation territory in itself. All infrastructure spending and planning specifically should be guided through the federal government, through ISK specifically. It should also be done through Infrastructure Canada, but that's for another time. But it's always interesting when amendments come in, and it's an amendment that is unnecessary, because the piece about the original motion is fine, but you have an amendment that came in that was very Alberta focused, because in Alberta the boundaries of the First Nations are often set like almost like little micro municipalities. They're really close to like Hobima, or they're close to or right in, say, Regina. Regina is mostly reserved. Calgary is mostly reserved. These make more sense there because their provincial government has to deal with the infrastructure consequences of that sort of thing. But if you look at Ontario, you have 300 and some odd Indigenous communities that require infrastructure that is nowhere near any municipality. You've got the entire north, which basically, in the eyes of the federal government, is Thunder Bay or Timmins, right? And that covers hundreds of communities that are fly-in. So I wanted to touch on that. So if anyone wants to go off on anything else, I just wanted to say it because that really bothered me. And I was there in the waiting room, and I decided to pull out because, again, there were a lot of resolutions to go through. So why would I waste everyone's time on a technicality, right? We've got a problem here, and it's not good.
I just wanted to jump in to say I have to jump off. That was unintentional, sorry. Anyway, see you folks. See you all tomorrow on the virtual, whatever we call it now. And hope you all get a good night's sleep.
Hey, DJ, before you go, do you want to give us your pitch?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Cool. So my name is DJ, as everybody knows. I'm running for NDP party president. That is the correct usage of NDP party there. And I'm running because I think that we need somebody who has an organizer's mindset in that position. The party president is an administrative job, and I think that the way I see it, it has two main sort of roles. One is to build the infrastructure of the party to where we can get elected, and the second is to ensure that we are making sure that our membership feels engaged, that they feel like they're a part of the party. Our activists feel like they have ownership over our party. And I think that this convention has definitely shown us that there's a lot of space for us to grow in, and I want to work on some of that. And I've got a lot of platform, and you can find it all on my website. I'm not going to bore everybody with that because I know you folks have a lot more to talk about. But yeah, voting is tomorrow. There's going to be short videos from all candidates, and so I hope you'll consider watching mine. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. There's contact information on the website. But yeah, that's my elevator pitch. I'm terrible at it. Okay. Have a good night, folks.
All right. Thanks for coming on, DJ. Have a great
Bye,
night.
DJ.
Take care. See ya. Bye.
Okay, we have another guest who's going to join us. Remember to give some likes and subscribes over to our fledgling channel here. We've been going since January. We're having a lot of fun, and we have another special guest to come. It's Jagmeet. No, I'm just kidding. I've been joking about that with Aggie all week. Jagmeet's going to come. It's going to be great. But if Jagmeet's listening, come on down. But you have to DM me for the link. I'm not just throwing that out there. We have a very special guest who's going to join us. We have Jessa McLean, who's the EDA president for York Simcoe and also running for president of the NDP. Jessa, are you ready to come on? Thumbs up, maybe? All right. Hi, Jessa.
Good evening, friends. How's everybody?
We're doing really, really great. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a long day.
That's an understatement.
So, Jessa, I wanted to give you some space here before we kept going on the discussion about convention and other things to give you a bit of a platform to talk about you yourself. You're running for president of the NDP, and I wanted to give everyone equal space here, and then we can start talking about all the things that bothered us today.
Okay. Oh, good. A rant session. So my name's Jessa McLean. Yeah, I'm running for NDP president. I am a community and a political organizer and really involved with the NDP. I don't like talking about myself. I've never really perfected that skill, but I know what we need. And I think this convention has made it pretty clear on what we need. Less talk, more action, a lot more inclusivity, accessibility. And these were things that were already on my platform, things that EDAs have been calling for, things the commissions have been calling for 3 years and have been falling on deaf ears. And yeah, I'm ready to replace that executive. Frankly, I'm very frustrated with convention, but I think it kind of reflects on how the grassroots are feeling right now in general across the country. But the good news is that there's lots of people that are ready to take in that position, strengthen the council, strengthen the executive, and give a voice to our grassroots, the voice they deserve, that they should have had on that convention floor.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for sharing some of your thoughts. You've been on the show before. We're old friends now. I guess I should probably, with the maybe one of the, I'm going to say top 5 good news stories out of the NDP convention is I was elected as the co-chair of the Aboriginal Commission. Thank you very much. And it's really exciting. You know, I think there is a lot of energy in the party right now. And regardless of how things happen this week, I think there is a lot of energy in grassroots movements. And it's nice to see, in my opinion, two really great candidates for president. And I think it's really, really great. I think we're spoiled for choice in a lot of places. Looking at the commissions that I was at, there are fantastic people who are running for positions. And I hope that the executives on those commissions get filled up. I hope the EDAs get filled up with people, because it is the people that are going to make it work really, really well. And it's a really, really exciting time to be a New Democrat. And I think you'd agree with me on that, Jess.
It really is. I mean, we're at a pivotal point in history, right? We want to come out of COVID, a completely different world. And we want to take advantage of the fact that people are in a spot right now where they understand the kind of change that has to happen and have been shown that it's possible. I think this convention also had the effect of, firing up the grassroots a little bit more. There's a frenzy around some of these resolutions. That's a good thing. I heard you guys talking earlier how it feels a bit of a competition, and I think we all acknowledge that's because there's a lack of space. You know, it's kind of like you put a bowl of food in front of 6 hungry puppies, and you just see them all like fighting over it. And I mean, there's many, many other ways that we could have gone around that. We should be doing this year round, right? We should be moving these kinds of solutions and discussions around the country and let people collaboratively build on them, rather than trying to cram them into such a stressful condition that's filled with deadlines and accessibility issues. It's really limiting, I think, what we could have gotten, because we see what happens when there are amendments, right? We start to really kind of perfect these and get more voices, but there's just no time to do that really meaningfully right now. But people they want to do it. They have really great ideas. That book is filled with really good ideas. That's promising.
Well, thanks for that, Jessa. We're going to go over to Brandon Tozzo for a minute, and I'm going to let Aggie be in charge for a couple of minutes. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I just want to touch on something Jessa said, and just about the energy and enthusiasm that's coming out of the convention and the policy resolutions. And I find it fascinating to contrast that with the Liberal and the Conservative convention a few weeks ago, and that there's a lot of good ideas on the left of the spectrum, and there isn't a ton on the right of the spectrum. Like, this is such, I think what we're living through, and so as somebody who's like really fascinated with history and political science, this is one of those times in history where we really just need those good ideas, and we really need people to be at the table and be activists and really just be there and put these ideas forward. Like, we're living at one of those points in history that I think people are going to look back that will shape the next decade or two, and these bold ideas are really going to be necessary. And I really hope that the NDP, both politically as a party and as a movement, is really at the forefront of those kinds of movements. And looking around and meeting all the New Democrats that I've met here, present and in the chat and online for the most part, it really is heartening to see that kind of energy and enthusiasm on the left, because I think I have enough gray hairs here to remember the 90s and the 2000s where we were told as being too far out there and too idealistic, and now like our ideas are becoming mainstream, and it's brilliant to see that. Like universal basic income, the Liberals are like into it. An idea has become pretty safe when the Liberals are adopting it. So it's kind of fascinating to see all these wonderful ideas really being out there. And on the right side of the spectrum, like, no one is talking deficit reduction. No one is talking less government. No one's talking less discussing like these major issues in long-term care. Like, what a time to be alive, and what a time to be a New Democrat. Like, I am just so enthusiastic about the future of our party and the future of the movement.
Good. That we need so much of that. I mean, how do you have so much energy at this time of night? What time zone are you in, Brandon? I feel like you could give me
I'm
some
in Kingston. I'm in Kingston. I just have a 2-year-old, so I'm just like always exhausted. So I've reached this middle level of like always kind of being half awake and half asleep. So
Yeah, I know. I feel you there. With the two twins being, I think, about 20 months old now, going on 21.
wow.
Yeah, we're busy all the time. So it's kind of like you get that second kick for sure once they go down. But they do call that like a caregiver's syndrome, where you kind of put off going to bed, so you get that alone time with yourself to kind of recalibrate and recharge. So it's definitely a strong feeling. Now, did anyone want to add to what Brandon just said, or challenge him on any of those points?
I challenge the chair.
Challenge the chair.
Oh no, Sean leaves for 5 minutes and we totally have a meltdown.
Do we have a secondary?
I'm sort of like, I'm curious because I come from like a bit of labor and academic and a bit more in the NDP. I don't attend conventions much, just for earlier it was financial reasons, and now it's just caregiving reasons. But I think Shailene has brought up a good point, and I'm just curious as people who are relatively new in first conventions and first to the party, and you seem like I understand your discouragement at the convention because it is that, but are you at all, having run for office previously, are you at all heartened about the fact that where the party is now and where culture is now? Like, does this give you any sort of energy and enthusiasm? Because I really feel newly invigorated as a leftist in the past year or two, and I'm curious around the table if people feel that way as well, or just more disheartened, or suppose, I guess, like, where's everybody at?
Okay, I don't see anyone unmuting, so I'm jumping in here. I wish I shared your excitement there, because right now, I talk a lot with riding executives, and we're really frustrated. We don't have the tools that we need. We get very little responsiveness. So I think there needs to be a bit of a culture shift in Ottawa for us to really energize all of the grassroots. I mean, Brandon can attest to this. We've seen a lot of people walk away in our region in Ontario out of frustration. Some of them need to just spend energy somewhere else in the movement because it's not rewarding enough. We've seen really good candidates decide they just weren't going to do it anymore. And a lot of that comes with how we're treating our grassroots. So this enthusiasm that we have with all of these possibilities and all these great ideas, I think to an extent is being squandered, because the structure that allows us to jump in and play and really work and go door to door, that's our riding associations. And I can attest to you 100%, even the ones that have MPs and MPPs, they are so frustrated right now because, I mean, to use Ontario as an example, we have one organizer in the whole of Ottawa. Only one person is tasked with putting out all the fires and getting all the people nominated and holding all the AGMs for every single riding association in Ontario. So we are ignored, and we could do so much more if the people just let out the keys. We don't need people. We don't need to hire 20 people in Ottawa. That's just not the solution. But we have to turn over the keys, because we're capable of doing it. There's some really good grassroots organizers out there that do a lot of work, just not with the party. And if we could get them to just channel that energy into a properly structured grassroots movement, empowered one, then I think I would be as excited as Brandon, because we would be unstoppable, absolutely unstoppable, because the ideas are all with us, and only we hold the solution to get out of this. I feel like Debbie Downer, though. I'm sorry. We need change, man, and I just can't put any kind of seal of approval on what I've seen so far just yet. Even if I wasn't running, that's the honest truth.
I'm going to take off for the evening, but I guess before I go, I do want to say, as disheartening sometimes these conversations around especially around convention, I feel like they take a next level at convention, can be. I always kind of hold on to the thought that they're not as disheartening as when the Liberals take a part of our platform and completely fail at delivering it, or do something absolutely backhanded to cut certain programming or to cut resources. And that's kind of the hope that I hold on to. And on top of that, the hope that I know that there is a strong community within the NDP that wants to see the policies that the Liberals and Conservatives continue to flub, see them get done. But also, it's almost like we have two very hard tasks to do. Not only get elected, not only to see through these policies happen, but to have the right conversations and to build the kind of party that is undeniably democratic, that is inclusionary, that is based on consensus and on community. And that's a lot. But I believe that if there's anyone, it's the NDP that can do this. And it's going to be a hard route to take. But there is so much strength there and so much willingness to do the right thing that's kind of what I hold on to in these very dark moments of point of order. And I challenge the chair. So good night, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Sean. And it was really nice to share space with all of you. Good night.
Good night.
See you later, Aggie.
I'm up here. I was just
That was
going to jump
date
in.
night, by the way. That was date night for Aggie and I.
That's something like Jeff and I would do as well too. Political couple.
No, please, Brandon, jump in.
Well, no, now I feel like, I feel like, thank you for letting us join in on your date night. That's so nice of you to share that.
I will.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll feel differently when convention's over. Maybe. Because I know I've brought it up in the private chat a few times, but like, for those of you who don't know, like I've been involved with the Canadian Federation of Students since I became a member of a student union who was a member local. And I've attended a few SGMs, and like there's been a few admittedly disheartening ones, and I say that with all love, but that's, and usually it's around procedural stuff. It's almost always around procedural stuff. This is my first federal convention, so I really don't have much to compare it to. I have the provincial NDP convention in 2019 to compare it to. I left that feeling like very lost and unsure of like why I was there. But then again, it was also, to my understanding, the largest provincial convention they had ever had. So maybe they were just not prepared for that many people. Like I think there was well over 2,000 people from across Ontario. I can't exactly remember the numbers. With this convention, it's just like, I guess in my mind, I keep thinking like, obviously the pandemic has thrown curveballs for us all. That's like just a given. And we really can't underestimate the impact that has on life. But like when we knew, because it was announced in, I think, December 2019, I want to say. So before the pandemic, they announced that we would be postponing convention. So before all of this. And then obviously, March hit and threw a curveball. But why was it? And like this is my wondering, is like a job posting was put out for someone to run this convention in, I want to say it was October, and the position wasn't to start until November. Where did that delay come from? Like that should have happened like as soon as we knew the pandemic was going to change the scope of the convention. Obviously we had to get a sense of like the politics of like, the MPs who are fighting in Parliament, but the staff who work, like, I just don't know what the thinking was. And I'm sure there was lots of reasons why, but I feel like if planning had started a bit earlier to prepare for a pandemic convention, maybe we wouldn't have run into some of these things. I don't know that for sure. There's nothing to compare it to. I don't know what went on behind the scenes. But just like that, I genuinely feel bad for some of the staff because like no amount of money can make one person be able to organize a whole convention. It's just a reality. And no amount of volunteers, like there's just all sorts of things. So I don't know. As a first-time delegate, as a young person, like how can I leave this thinking this will probably be my first and only federal convention, if I'm being honest. Sure, I'll watch it on CPAC. I mean, I've spent years watching conventions on CPAC, wondering what's going on. And I always wanted to attend a federal convention. I was very excited coming into it. Now, you know, I'm like that meme of the unicorn that looks a little beaten down, and there's like a pipe stack in the back, smokestack in the back, and it just like, that's how I kind of feel right now, if I'm being honest. I just seem peppy right now, probably because I've had some time to like decompress a bit after. I don't know. It's just like I think I imagine a lot of people are feeling disheartened. People from all across so like we're all united in our disappointment, and some of us are also united in as parts of traumatic experiences we've had through convention, or experiences of like feeling undervalued, or feeling this, that, and the other thing, and those are all valid feelings. So it's just like, it's kind of like, the way I think of it in this case is like someone had mentioned, it's fair that like to say, you know, oh well, look at the liberals. I mean, they're full of BS. Like, let's be honest. You know, they're not like, if and I say if they were to actually put forward a basic income, it's going to be like a pilot or something like that in like 10 communities across the country. Like, it's not going to be well done. But should we be comparing ourselves to the low bar? That's kind of my thought. Like, we tend to think like, oh, well, the US is so much worse. It's like, maybe in comparison, but should we be looking through that lens? Or should we be saying, how can we make here better? I will say there was a few, like, I'll point to some highlights to end on a bit of a lighter note. Obviously, there's still a day left, so maybe my disappointment will be exceeded or undersold. Who knows? We passed the Palestine Resolution passed, which I genuinely didn't think was going to happen. I don't even mean that I didn't think it was going to pass. I didn't even think we were going to get to debate it. Because like we've been lucky to get through 2 resolutions in the time slot. So I just thought like, no way. Because folks understandably and rightfully wanted to speak to supporting the farmers in India, and people who've been protesting for human rights, for a just world in India. All the power to those folks. It was unfortunate. Like, I wish we could have these discussions. I mean, we do have these discussions all the time, but I wish in the formal sense of convention, folks, there's so much that they wanted to share. And I was like, I hate that these motions have to get, or these resolutions have to get pinned up against each other like that. It's not great. But I'm so glad that those resolutions passed. And another kind of fun thing has been like trying to find ways to socialize with people. There's really no social rooms, so I've just had to kind of find it. But it's like, maybe that's something that they could work on for next time, is like creating formal, informal spaces where we can socialize, rather than relying on, and not to say grassroots groups should, like, they do exist and they organize and they create social spaces, but like, it'd be nice for the party to maybe set up a bit of that. Oh, a bar is an option. Or even like,
want to go to a bar.
Like, where's my trivia night? Where's my karaoke night? Like, not like,
maybe if we end up on stream late enough, I will do an NDP CCF trivia bit. But
we all need a karaoke night. Like, you guys need to hear me belt Total Eclipse of the Heart out from the top of my lungs, and
yeah. Shailene, I think you had some points you were going to add into what Brandon was talking about.
I definitely do. And I think Brandon spoke to a little part of my soul just now, where I'm a little bit like, a little bit more at peace, just to hear articulated, I think, what has been a very emotional roller coaster of a weekend so far for people. Just to put it nicely. The chat. Oh no.
No, that's what I was laughing at. I wasn't laughing at you.
That's okay. I know. I was like, it couldn't be me. I wasn't intentionally funny. And even when I am, I'm sometimes not funny. So, but I think I have to plug in a little bit to what Jessa had said earlier. And I think that, sure, I'll be the negative Nancy as well, maybe a little bit, but maybe I'll put on my angry Black woman hat as well, because I'm glad that people are angry. I'm glad that they are frustrated and frankly pissed off that this convention has gone how it has. I'm glad that people are reeling from this past year, not because I wanted any of us to go through any of this, but I'm glad that there is an emotional response to the absolute foolishness that we have been dealing with and continue to, both internally as a party and externally in our communities, in our provinces, territories, and in our country as a whole. And I challenge people that, great, so you feel very strongly about something. How are you going to channel that? How are you going to channel that? Because that is when change comes. We don't protest for the pretty pictures alone. There's a purpose there, and there is emotion, and there's community, and there is necessity for that. And I'm not saying we necessarily have to protest, though I am always down. But I think that the conversation has to turn to, when you feel angry, when you feel frustrated, do not let that turn into apathy and disengagement. And I think that is something that we see a lot. And we collectively, and I say that loosely, but there's people who are at the center of this party with a lot of privilege that I really need to like open the blinds and take a look out their window. Because the way I would describe it is that if you were standing in the middle of a soccer field and you're trying to encourage people to come join you in the center of the field, but you see that there's people spread all over the field and there are some outside of the bounds, those are members of your party that feel very marginalized, that feel apathetic, that feel disengaged. And no matter how loud you shout, when the message reaches their ears or reaches them, it's going to be a lot weaker than it would be if they were closer to you. And so what are you going to do to help bring them to where you are and channel them and make them feel like they're still part of the movement and part of the team? And so it's not just about building party ranks, it's about building a movement. And if you can't inspire people to want to tap in and plug into your movement, to your purpose, even when things are imperfect, then you're not doing your job. And quite frankly, you might be horribly angry at the NDP because of how this convention went. But if you feel strongly about a candidate in your riding who you want to see make change and who you know will fight that internal battle and external battle, then tap into them and put your faith in them. And obviously I'm a little biased because I am seeking our nomination, but I think it's so important that when you see individuals that resonate with you, that you plug in and support them and you put aside the party politics, because that can be dealt with, right? That is a system that can be tackled, but it is always people who inspire people. Parties don't inspire people. People inspire people. And so for me, I'm definitely angry. And Brandon posed a really good question. I am angry, but you know what makes me more angry than this absolute circus that we just went through today? The fact that my community is sincerely struggling and has been for a long time at all levels of government. And we have members, especially one federally, that doesn't do nearly enough and has sat for 16 plus years doing absolutely nothing, the bare minimum. And I have to see neighbors suffer every single day. That makes me angry. And so for them, for their sakes, I'm willing to fight two battles, as we were talking about earlier. And I will gladly do so, because at the end of the day, our community and our party are going to be better for it. And so, yeah, I guess at the end of it, I hope people take their anger and they don't just put it aside and they channel it into something and channel it into people and channel it into safe community spaces. So power to the people at ASOP.
Hell yeah. Well said, Shailene. I think one of the things that we should do, I know there's so many things that we're going to talk about, but I know that a lot of delegates are tuned in right now. And the first section of policy that we're going to be discussing tomorrow is Section 5, which is governing in an inclusive and fair Canada. We have the adoption and implementation of calls for justice, the final report, and the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. Just call the question. We have the need for high-speed internet in rural, remote, and Indigenous communities there. Please just call the question. Act on gender-based violence. Please just call the question. Economic recovery for women. Please just call the question. We have a reconciliation motion, and then we have land back. Those are important policies. And please, if you're a delegate, call the question on all of them, because we agree on them, but we need to get them into the policy book. I know that there was some back channeling going to from other delegates, but I'm using my platform here to move forward on Section 5, which is the next one. We need to get these pieces out. We do not need to wait for one pro or one con. You can call the question right off the hop. And if the Politburo is ready to adopt it, you can do it. You do not need to hear one pro, one con. Should I not have called it the Politburo? But basically, the convention doesn't need to hear pros and cons. You can go right to a question. And I think that this is the other thing. The top 5 policies are no-brainers. The 6th one with land back is the one place where I personally, even as incoming co-chair of the Aboriginal Commission, which should also in Section 6 be called the Indigenous Peoples Commission. Come on, people. It's 2021. But there are a lot of things that need to just happen. And I think that collectively we need to commit to just passing policy and getting through as many things as possible. And points of order, points of privilege, and making a convention with 2,040 people in it your own personal platform is not important. There are communities depending on us to show up for them. It's not just our EDAs who elected you to be here. It is the broader communities who we're here to represent, and we need to do better. So that's my pulpit, and I will turn away from it. Does anyone want to talk about kittens or puppies or anything good?
Palestine?
Not about puppies.
Yes,
Oh,
I think
go
we
ahead,
should
Jessa.
talk about a great victory for the quote-unquote left within the left party, that the Palestine Resolution passed with over 80% support from the delegates, which is amazing.
It tells us we just needed to ask the membership. We didn't need to avoid this for so long, that the membership were always on the right side of history here. And they just needed to be able to speak on that. I cannot tell you how emotional I was.
It's perfect.
Getting those results. The amount of work that goes into Palestinian justice is so painful, and it is so combative, and it can be such a toxic battle. And I can't even imagine what some Palestinians are feeling right now after years and years and years of trying to just get this recognized on a platform like this. And for them to know that 80% of those delegates on the floor stood behind them the entire time, and that they weren't fighting the membership, they were fighting bureaucracies, and they were fighting a false narrative, and they won today. They cannot tell us that our entire party is anti-Semitic. We are not. We are on the right side of justice, and we want to free Palestine.
Brandon, I think you wanted to talk about this a little bit. Either one, actually. Tozzo, no? No, I think it's super important. So I'll echo some of the struggles that I've seen on council floors and on convention floors over the years. And this is a great victory for a lot of people who've been working very hard to advance simple international solidarity with an oppressed people. And one of the things that we've talked about here on the show, in the way that I approach international solidarity, because I'm an international party member of Sinn Féin in Ireland, because my somewhat citizenship there, it makes me, it's weird with Canada and the Indian Act and internationalism, but I'm a member of the Carta there, and I believe in international solidarity, and I think a lot of New Democrats need to believe in international solidarity, and that means Cuba, it means Palestine, and it means all of these places, because the principle as New Democrats that we need to believe in is we stand on the side of the oppressed, wherever they may be. That's the number one thing that we should do, whether it's around the corner from us, within our own homes, by proxy of economic systems that subjugate our people, to those across the seas or for anywhere. And that has to be one of the guiding principles of New Democrats, is we stand on the side of the oppressed. And this is very, very important. It's a very, very important thing that our party did today. And I am very happy to see it. And it is super, super, super. And it brings me joy, a lot of joy, that this is something that the party found to be like over 80% in support of delegates. This is amazing. If you threw that to the membership, I'm sure it would be higher. And this is the other thing that brings us into our discussions that we've talked about, prioritization and other things. We need to be bringing membership into prioritization, into developing of policies, into all these sorts of things. And really, there's a lot of ways that we can do that, especially moving into more digital platforms for conventions or councils and things like that. It's really, really great. So thank you to all the members who supported that motion today. I think that was a great victory for not only the left of the NDP, but for the NDP itself. As a party, leadership will benefit from it. Leadership is going to benefit from this a big time, because research has shown that Canadians are on the side of the NDP when it comes to upholding the rights of Palestinians. Human rights are Palestinian rights are human rights. And I don't think any Canadian within any sort of margin of victory is going to deny any of that. It's a fact. And it is great for the party to be on the right side of history and the right side of justice. So there's my thoughts on the Palestinian Resolution. Everyone's on mute.
I know this. I mean, Jessa mic drop, so there's really not what, like, I don't know what else to add. Another big victory, I'd say, is, so for those who maybe weren't watching on CPAC or aren't delegates, there was another big victory was there was an amendment to the minimum wage motion. Originally, it was $15 an hour. Now, I should say, there used to be a federal minimum wage in Canada, but it only applied to federal jobs, like federally regulated industries and positions. But it was amended to $20 an hour, and that passed. Interestingly, passed with a smaller margin than the Palestine Resolution, but the Justice of Peace for Israel-Palestine. But we did pass a resolution to endorse a $20 minimum wage federally. And that does send shockwaves through the provinces and territories because, at this point, as someone very eloquently debated during the convention, for most communities, $15 doesn't cut it. And I'm sure there's folks in here who might also have some thoughts on that.
That's another big thing with reestablishing a federal minimum wage, and call it 15, call it 20, it doesn't matter. 20 is great. But what it does, I think, and I'm going to make a point, and then I want to go right to Brandon Tozzo because he's the person I want responding to this. So, Brandon, let's talk about federal minimum wage for a second. In thinking that we have, we have a political party that's starting to advocate for a federally imposed minimum wage. We know already that the federal government doesn't have a lot of minimum wage earners that are applicable across the provinces and territories. So we're in a situation now where we have a small minority of, let's say we're the government. We have a small minority of workers in each province or territories operating with a federal minimum wage as federal employees. It's not a federal minimum wage because that's not how Canada works because we got that stupid constitution in the British North America Act. What I like to see is the federal NDP specifically be aspirational. I don't expect costing in a platform. I don't expect how it's going to work. I don't expect this because it's not the way that it works. What we need to do is provide leadership at the federal level for the provinces and territories to implement things by the withholding of transfer funds, which is how we got Medicare in the 1960s and things like that. It's how we do things. It's how it has to happen. So, Brandon Tozzo, Doctor, in your opinion, it's a good thing.
Well, I'm not that kind of doctor, so I'm just going to start by saying that. No, I'm a doctor of political science. Yeah, and I think like I think what this is really oriented towards is that I think we are in an opportunity where we can see the federal government, whomever that federal government is, really start to set the tone for what provincial governments are at the bargaining table. Because of just the sheer amount of debt that the provinces are going to be in, and the, I think, public pushback for demanding more services, the federal government can go in and say, hey, if you want money for healthcare, these are the following conditions. You get pushback, of course, from Quebec and the West and most provinces, but I think that what we're going to be left with at the end of the next few years, and this is just to your point, Sean, is really the federal government in a much stronger bargaining position vis-a-vis the provinces, even with that horrible, constitution, the way it's done. Like that constitution, it's in writing, but politics is done with people. So I really think that it does give us that ability to be able to negotiate better, to set these kinds of standards with the provinces as part of that negotiating. Are we going to set like a federal standard for $20? I think it's aspirational. I also think it's by saying that standard, we can go to the provinces and get them kind of get there as part of a negotiating chip. But they may go kicking and screaming, and I don't think in Ontario, in most communities, a $20 wage is even a livable wage in most areas. I don't think you can pay rent in anywhere in the GTA for $20. So I think that has to be considered as well. But yeah, I think that, I think what this really shows is that where the federal government is going to be in a great bargaining position to set national standards. And when was the last time we talked about that? Like, when was the last time we actually talked about the federal government sitting down and saying, if you want, we want these standards in place, go out and do it, provinces. Here's the money. Here's a check. Do it. I would like to see that, because I can't remember when it's been happened in my lifetime. And there,
yeah, please.
No.
Oh yeah. I think someone said that. Where was it? It was in the comments. Really great to hear a liberal talking point at an end. Yeah, it happens. It's the nature of the beast. Big tent party. You never know who's going to show up. It was like at Ontario caucus, where someone withdrew themselves from election for Ontario representative because they didn't want to split the right-wing vote. Like, all right. It's...
I asked him in the chat if he could tell us who that was, just so we could be prepared, but they didn't divulge that information.
I think that was really important for us to know, though. So it was. I think all of us were just like, WTF, what's happening right now? It was a very bizarre moment this morning.
Yeah, that was. I think we can swear now. What is it? 3 minutes to 10. We can swear after 10, and YouTube won't shut us down. I'm just kidding. You can swear anytime you want. But I think the minimum wage discussion is really, really important. And it's also about the federal government taking leadership. So we've talked on this show before with Peter Julian about Motion M1, the Green New Deal motion that made it into the House of Commons, which is the Green New Deal motion that we want. That's the one. It's what we want. It's the federal jobs guarantee. It is the IPCC climate targets. It's what we want in a Green New Deal, with broad scale public sector investment into clean energy. And just responding to the text, we don't know who the person that we wanted those votes to go for. It was a mystery because we couldn't see each other. And it was a really poorly run commission meeting. The Ontario caucus was a disaster this morning. However, I was very happy to cast my votes for two individuals who I thought were very good. And I hope they win. If they, turn it down again, if they, destroy the, if we go back into it, I'll vote for them again. I thought I voted for two really good candidates who I heard speak. Anyways, so there's really good stuff out there about those kinds of policies, and it's important that we try to push the federal NDP adopt aspirational policies to influence the provinces, because we're always going to get a bullshit systemic racism excuse from the liberals and conservatives that we can't do anything. And it's what they do. So $20 federal minimum wage is good, actually.
They can't do anything until it's their idea, right?
Has anyone tried passing notes from our convention to their convention?
They only do that at election time, and then they look to our platform to figure out what to do.
Or remember, these things don't automatically go in our platform, right? We've got to keep pressure up and make sure that they actually do start talking about $20 an hour, because that sets a huge precedent. I mean, unions can go in there now and say, hey, those federal workers that work alongside us are getting $20 an hour minimum wage. I mean, that really just brings the whole, everybody up. We could change the Canadian Labor Code, though, but that's a little bit more complicated. But that's what, how Sean's talking about actually being leaders. The same with long-term care homes. We're so afraid of reopening the Canada Health Act to actually make the changes that need to be there or ensure reproductive rights. And we need to start flexing our muscles there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a firm believer of that. Selma Memokwa, who's a friend of mine and a friend of the show, the MPP for Kiwetinoong, which means up north, pretty much. That's what Kiwetinoong means, or up there. He has been talking on Twitter quite a bit, and in his statement saying that the jurisdictional ping pong between the province of Ontario, say through Doug Ford over to Justin Trudeau and the back and forth, this is another instance of systemic racism and colonialism that the government impose upon marginalized people, and particularly Indigenous people who have treaty obligations where representatives of the Crown are responsible for. That's the province and Canada. And one of the things that we need to do about Indigenous policy is to be very bold in our expectations of both the provinces and the federal government, because they are all representatives of the Crown. I think we have a leak. And we can, come on, do it.
It's not a leak, is it? Like,
Breaking news.
Because I think about a few caucuses and commissions have publicly, I know the Aboriginal Commission tweeted the results of the co-chair election. So
that was after it was announced. It was announced on the floor.
So I will just say that I'll say that the Youth Canada Young New Democrats results are in, and in some cases, in the case I'm a member of Canada Young New Democrats. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. So we all vote in, and we actually voted on every single position. So there's co-chairs. I could see people are just tell everyone already. There's co-chairs, there's secretary, all that sort of stuff. Am I actually allowed to share it though if it hasn't been shared on the floor of the convention? That's what I don't want to I don't mind.
I saw on Twitter that one of the candidates made a comment.
Oh, a few candidates have tweeted. So I feel like I'm allowed to share because a few candidates have tweeted out that they won.
Okay, breaking news.
So, and I don't have last names because I just did the list. But I know that Sama and Kirat have been elected as the co-chairs of Canada's Young New Democrats. That was maybe anticlimactic, but that's what I know. And then I won't list off all the other candidates, but there's a bunch of people that won. So yeah, congrats to Kirat and Sama for being elected co-chairs of Canada's Young New Democrats, and they'll serve a 2-year term. So lots of work to do ahead. And there's just under a dozen other people who sit on Canada's Young New Democrats. So congrats to all the people who, sought office. It's hard to put your name forward. It's, especially in this and the environment that we're in through this convention. There's like young folks. Like when someone was like, "Oh, put your name forward," is like, nope. I thought about it for a hot second, and I was like, yeah, no.
Brandon, you should come over to the Aboriginal Commission. There are positions there. We could work really well together.
I have to be honest. I don't think I have the capacity. I think I don't want to stretch myself thin because
Hey, I'm just pitching it while I can.
Already president of my riding association, and I feel like I'm not even living up to that. So I'll figure it out and stick to local, and then provincial issues. Associations, our associations are joint. So technically I'm president of both of them, but so those are the results. Congrats to everyone who sought office and to all the people who were elected. Let's get some shit done. I'll start off the swearing for the night, I guess.
Welcome aboard. I have done a lot of swearing. Okay. A lot of great comments here in the chat about how well the CYNDP, Canada Young New Democrats Commission conference ran. Youth Give Me Hope. Alden says he do a great job, Brandon. I think there's good things. Let me see. So there were other things that passed today. The federal minimum wage is good, paid sick days. What else did we have that was very, very interesting? I think someone touched on it, was the Marie Clark Walker amendment to the Combating Racism Resolution. Did we talk about that yet? We did. Okay. No, we didn't. Did we talk about that?
But we should.
We should. I think it's important. I think that was a really good moment within the party, and specifically around resolution, in how we can take things out of a resolution instead of just adding things in. And I think Marie Clark Walker did a fantastic job at advocating for what members are wanting to see. So does anyone want to touch on that? Shailene.
Sorry, my bias is shining through, but that for me was actually a really pivotal moment, I think, for today. I had rage quit from my computer for the 10th time during convention, and I had gone for a break and a little decompress walk outside. And when I came back, that was actually what was being discussed and debated. And so I was blown away, I suppose, by how clearly the amendment and the reasoning behind it could encapsulate so much of the defund the police resolution that we likely are not going to get to. I think was that in this section? Was it in 6 or was it in 7? Oh my gosh, I don't even remember anymore. I think it was 6.
I think it was 6.
Yeah, so we weren't going to get to it. And I think it was for me, it was a big deal that was worked into at least this resolution. I think combating racism is a very big umbrella to try to carry. And we've seen time and time again how it gets watered down and washed out, and small things can get, slipped in there so easily. That might sound nice in theory, but aren't solutions in praxis. And so I think for a lot of people, the removal of that dedication of more resources really nodded to a resolution that we weren't going to get to, and our demand that we will not be further funding the police or the RCMP in any way, shape, or form. There is no reforming a system that is operating exactly as designed, and there is no trying to band-aid solution, a very oppressive and violent body that continues to make so many people live in fear and ruin lives, destroy families, and just anyway, I won't get too deep into it, but I think it was a very big deal for a lot of people. It certainly was a big deal for me. I am incredibly grateful to her for speaking to it with such passion and power, and in a very unapologetic, just straight to the point way. That's exactly what we need. I don't need to try to make other people comfortable or appease folks. You can disagree because you don't understand, but you will not change what the outcome needs to be. And that's an attitude I think more of us, especially in marginalized groups, need to be taking when we're discussing things like this, because we have seen how, defund the police just barely passed at my riding association by 1 vote, and we had people abstain. And that for me was such a moment of panic. And so I was there again today, hands clenched, a little bit panicked to see, is this amendment going to be adopted? And I'm so glad it was. I'm so glad it was. Maybe not as big of a win as the Free Palestine, and that's okay, because I still think people are interacting with this in a different way. But it was definitely a step in the right direction. And so that's what I'll say about this one.
And thanks,
Thank
Shailene.
you so much.
Yeah, I was really Marie Clark, first of all, is fantastic, and the work that she's done to not only decolonize but to really do the work of emancipating kind of labor at the highest level is really unprecedented. There hasn't been someone like Marie Clark before, and I look up to her a lot in the work that she's provided, and what you're sharing, Shailene, I think is so important for us, because we all won't approach these motions the same way. Not all of us have the same power for that, but we need to be able to understand the values that you're sharing, and we need to understand what people are providing. And that was something that Marie Clark did in such a wonderful way. She was able to take all of our attention, immediately address what the issue was, and provide a solution to us, and be like, this is what we need. And I'm so happy that the convention floor was responsive to that, and picked up on that, because I think it's so important. And as somebody who comes from the Asian community that is seeing so much happening right now, I'm Chinese Jamaican, so my family is both Chinese and Jamaican, and both of those things at the same time. And I find I operate at such a strange place sometimes, because I find that my Chinese identity is sometimes erased, or my Jamaican identity is sometimes erased, and they can occupy the same space at the same time, but I'm clear evidence that they can, and they do. But one thing that I was thinking about, so I had put forward an emergency motion, which I hope will hit the floor tomorrow, and it was on Stop Asian Hate. And the reason why it's a true emergency in that we couldn't have debated this, because there was no way to put in a motion before. We wouldn't have known that March 16th was going to happen. We wouldn't have known that the murder of these sex workers and women conducting legitimate work would have happened. So in the true sense of the matter, this is an emergency motion because we couldn't have debated it unless it was brought up at convention, because we couldn't have met the February 8th deadline. So I'm hoping that'll meet the ground. And when I was crafting it, one of the hardest things I had was that we cannot talk about racism without talking about the police, and we have to talk about we cannot talk about anti-hate without talking about the police, because the way these structures are set up is that this is not a place where we can go for reconciliation, for protection, to fix the harm that is caused. The police force, the justice system is not set up to be that place of emancipation for racialized folks and Indigenous folks and brown and black people. And Marie Clark was able to get to that today and start to have that kind of conversation. So I'm really hopeful that tomorrow, if this resolution does hit the floor, that we can that we can get the support of people, because it's, especially with what happened in Atlanta, it's not. It's a discussion about sex work. It's a discussion about the police. It's a discussion about white supremacy. It's a discussion about white terrorism. And I specifically use the language white supremacy and white terrorism. But I also very specifically did not include the police in the motion itself, because I think that it's not. I don't want them centered. I don't want them part of the motion. The motion should be on the causes of these issues. And if the police continue to be part of the system that continues to oppress and create these conditions in which people are being killed, then we need to make sure that we are that they are also part of the dismantling and the emancipation in that process as well too. So tomorrow afternoon, there's a small section that's for emergency resolutions, and I really hope I can count on everybody's support in order to make sure that we can pass a resolution at this NDP convention to stop Asian hate and make sure that we are speaking to the rise of anti-Asian hate right across the globe.
Thank you for that, Brian. I think you can count on everyone who's a delegate on this panel, and hopefully everyone in who's tuning in. We got 40, 50 people here on and off. I'm sure the only reason you've heard about it is because you're all here at the NDP convention. This is, I think we can support that, and we're all here for you on that. I think it's really, really important. There are other emergency resolutions too, and I'm sure we'll hear about them soon. We know our comrade Jay Woodruff has a emergency resolution as well, and we want to support all of the folks who do have policy resolutions coming up. I think they're all good, and we want to support them all. I think Brandon, Amyot, you have to take off, so. Do you want to say goodbye to the folks, and we'll keep going because there's tons of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I might be back on a little bit later. I've just got to make a call. But I just in case I don't get to come back on, I wanted to say that it's been lovely chatting with all you folks. There is, of course, I will support Brian's resolution. I really hope that it makes it high up, and because I know tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. there will be a prioritization committee, which is a few of the members of federal executive or federal council volunteer to sit on, and they go through all of the emergency resolutions that were submitted on time. Where was it going? Yeah, so there's a few emergency resolutions coming forward. I want to do a shout out to. There's going to be one on. Basically acknowledging the autonomy of autistic folks and ensuring that the federal NDP does proper consultation with autistic folks. There are some resolutions already on that were originally in the resolutions booklet that didn't end up getting prioritized. So that's one of them. There will also be one regarding, this one will probably be the controversial one. I don't know if it'll even make it to the floor, around condemning John Horgan, who unfortunately was a speaker at the convention, who in my opinion had no business speaking at the convention. I realize he's an NDP premier, but he has done irreparable harm to Indigenous peoples on unceded territories in what we now know as British Columbia. And he has done irreparable harm to the NDP as a party. And I think this is one of those ones that, should probably be debated at a federal convention because it's quite controversial. But it goes to the heart and soul of what is this party? What is this movement? So I hope that'll make it. We'll see what happens there. But I just wanted to say, miigwech, thank you everyone for the evening, and hopefully I'll be back on in a little bit. But if not, I hope you will get well rested for what is sure to be quite a day tomorrow, because we're debating constitutional amendments. We'll see how many we get through. But
Brandon,
and an election, Brandon.
And an election, yes. So Bama P, Gigawaman, take care everyone, and we'll see if I'm back on later.
Manol Debekan, Bama P, Guap Minwa. Minwa.
Bye.
All right.
I miss Brandon already.
Yeah, we'll get him back. It's okay. We just got to stay on for maybe another half an hour or so.
He and I have a debate of who's the better Brandon, and I still say he's the better Brandon of the two Brandons. So
he's right.
Or they are the better Brandon. I apologize. That's they. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I apologize.
Let's go on. So what else happened in the last little while? There's been a convention going on. We're doing a live show. There's tons of people watching us. I think this is a perfect time to give platform to a couple of people who are seeking the nomination. I believe we have 2 on the call tonight. We have Brian Chang. We also have Shailene Panylo. Brian Chang, Shailene Panylo are 2 fantastic human beings who I really support 110% in being representative of their community, but also being representative of the party and also the best values of the party. And I want to thank you so much for being yourselves and stepping up. Can we get your links to socials, to donations? Throw them in the chat. Let's get them out there, because we need to support folks that will come on a show like this to be MPs. I think that is very, very important. And one of the things that we need to do, Jeff Slater is apparently a very big fan of Brian. I don't know if anyone knows Jeff. Does anyone know Jeff? Jeff Slater is really liking Brian Chang. But we really, really, really need to support candidates like Brian and Shailene in the party, as being the face of our party out in the community workers who believe in strong, solid leftist policy. They know how to get around. They know how to talk to people. It's really, really important. I know I've talked on here that I'm not quite a socialist. I'm more like a socialist populist. But one of the best things about people like Brian and Shailene is they talk to people. And it is so amazing. You go out there, you talk to as many community members as possible, you make those connections, you do the work. It's really, really important. I'm waiting for those donation and sign up links to drop in the chat. If we can get them up in there, I think it's great. Very, very important. I'm on. It's also me I'm telling to do the work. Shailene, do I go to your website, or is there a different website I should do?
Sorry, I'm grabbing it right now. We've got our.
Okay, thank you. I was like trying to do everything while I was texting, but also not look like I was like typing up here. So if everyone else could do that, that'd be really, really great.
Sorry, do they have your nomination dates yet, Shailene and Brian?
Not mine yet, but I know Brian just popped his in the chat, I believe.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, mine is going to be Wednesday, April 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So you can go to brianchang.ca/nomination, or just brianchang.ca, and you can have a look at that as well too. And let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to see you all there. It's going to be yeah, we're getting all back into this. Who knows when the next election is? There could be an election by the time a nomination is called, because the budget is released 2 days prior. So who knows in this very unpredictable time how things are going to play out. But we're hitting the ground running again, and making sure that we are talking out there in the community and doing everything that we can, and everything that we can safely during a time of COVID as well too.
Can we get in the chat all of the folks tuning in? There's about 40 of you right now. Put in the chat what riding you're from. I think that'd be a really interesting thing to get maybe while we're hearing from Shailene.
I just put in, there's the Oshawa Federal NDP donation link, and I also put the membership sign up. So if you are someone that is in a riding with a candidate and you want to vote at their nomination meeting, whether it's myself or Brian or anyone else out there who is putting their name forward, make sure that you have a membership in good standing. So you can click that second link to sign up. Obviously, I'm plugging my Oshawa folks, but definitely please do in your riding so that you can support your local candidates. My nomination meeting, it hasn't been set yet. I believe there's still other folks in vetting right now, perhaps for Oshawa. And so we are waiting for that directive still. So we'll see. But as soon as I know, folks will know.
That's fantastic. It looks like there's other prospective candidates in the chat here. It's really great to see.
And Adrian Roberts, I believe, is already nominated in Brantford Brand. I think that's right, Adrian.
Yes, that's right. So,
Congratulations.
Adrian Roberts, if you can drop your information in the chat, we'll share it with everyone who's here. We also have Alicia Gutskowski and Jordan Klusterman, who are seeking the nomination, or at least looking at the nomination. That is fantastic. Rep your hoods. It's great. It's great. This is how we do it. You know, we create spaces where we get to have fun. And who better to have fun with than Brandon Tozzo, who is now going to serenade us with his version of Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond. Take it away, Brandon.
No, you don't want that. I'm just going to say you don't want that. Someone in the chat did say that they can donate to your campaigns, and by the way, contact me when you guys get nominated, and I will make a donation as well. And they can donate beer to me, of which I will happily accept beer in lieu of a donation. So you can contact me on Twitter, and I will send you interest to send me beer across the province. Yeah, we're not well done by me singing, Sean. Trust me, I don't have as much musical of a voice that you would expect. But good luck on your nominations. It's great. It's campaigns. I've worked on a number of campaigns. They're tough work, and as a candidate, I'm not rich. I am very much not rich. But if I've worked with many candidates, and it's always tough to be a candidate. It's always tough to put your name out there. You both have run before. You know what you're signing up for. And I just can't imagine what it's like to run during COVID, because I used to love door knocking, and I used to also enjoy fundraising. But I can't imagine what it's like to do during COVID, where you can't have that individual one-on-one meeting. It must be so different.
And if people want to jumpstart about like how to think about campaigning in the pandemic as either a person who's a candidate or as somebody who wants to support as a VCO or organizer or volunteer or whatnot, I actually wrote a report after my by-election in Toronto Centre just a few months ago, because I think it was so important to pass on that institutional kind of learnings, especially since everything that we did in that by-election was kind of trying to figure out what the hell you can do during a time of pandemic and trying to do it and make it look nice and make it look pretty and whatnot. So I wrote a report called The Good Fight. You can find that on my website as well too. It's free. You just go to brianchang.ca. Right at the top, you'll see Good Fight. Click on it. It's a nod to one of my favorite shows, The Good Fight and The Good Wife. And it's a detailed plan of kind of just what you should think about in terms of like COVID pandemic thinking, how to develop a COVID safety policy, what kind of activities you should think about that are safe or not. And I think it's mostly written for Ontario. So if you're outside of the province, I apologize, but I think you'll find quite a bit of it quite useful. And hopefully that accelerates your own campaigns, because I'm very much about making sure that we help support and build up New Democrats as much as possible. And I wish I had mentioned that in my panel yesterday, but there was just so much going on. I didn't have time to mention that. So I'm mentioning it now for all of you.
Thanks for that, Brian. No, we're all rooting for both of you and wish you all the best. And especially wishing the best to Jessa, who's running for president as well. And Brandon, I believe you're running for the position of resident. What was it?
I'm ready for anything. Get off my back, Sean.
I'm just teasing Brandon.
I know. You know I have a good sense of humor. So, meme lord. I will take a look. I maintain that title. I am not running for office. I've had a few people who've been pressuring me to run, and I will not do that to my wife.
Kindness is a virtue. I think it's very, very important. But thank you all for everything. Is there anything else we think we should touch on tonight? What are we thinking? Jessa, Shailene, Brian, Brandon?
I mean, what do y'all miss about Rheal conventions?
People. People.
Yeah, I miss working the room.
The energy.
Yeah.
The energy. People and the energy.
Yeah. We have a Discord and a chat channel, a voice channel. So it's kind of like sitting at a table and you're renting a kind of what the moments, and it was much better the second day than we didn't really use it so much the first day, but today it was a little more cathartic. You felt you weren't so alone, because that was what the best part of convention was. You finally met all these Twitter personalities and the writings next to you that had helped you. You got to like really kind of get together, and there was no social element built into this, but some people have been creative. Courage has a social night every night, and that was helpful tonight, because I think a lot of us came in like really excited and really drained. It's this mix of emotions, so we needed to be in the same space as people who had felt that all day. And in my house, I go upstairs like going like this, and they don't get it, right? You needed to be around your people. I love my family, but they're not my people,
I miss hospitality suites.
Free booze.
I'm not running for anything. I can be honest. I'm like
the buttons. I miss collecting buttons. And
buttons.
Coming home
Hats.
with a lanyard. They should have at least mailed us a lanyard. So,
You got to make your own. I'm going to take this book. Actually, I just got this book. I'm looking forward to reading it. It's by Glenn Greenwald about the Bolsonaro Brazil. It's going to be very, very good. There's my leftist cred for the evening. But
I have to say, I don't mind not having those when they give you your credential, and it's like this giant piece of laminated like paper that you have to wear around your neck the whole time and show it every time you're entering the room. I don't mind not having to do that, or but yeah, there's so much. Also, the federal lobbyists and the organizations that lobby federally apparently have a lot more money. So like, I've only ever experienced one provincial convention. So the federal conventions have a habit of being quite legendary with the offerings of hospitality suites. And who knows? There might have been a poutine bar I would have partaken in had we all been in one place, but. Alas.
I miss just running into people. It's my favorite times, in my last pre-pandemic event was the NDP's provincial council in Ontario in March of 2020, like March 7th or whenever it was my last like in real life. And we were hustling, we were at the bar, we were in Scarborough. It was a good time. We stayed up late. I was hanging out. We had a great time. That was my last like big rip-roaring party night, was Scarborough with the Ontario NDP. Shout out to anyone who was there. It was very fun.
Alden, we went to
Alden,
and we were at the Greek restaurant in the bar underneath, and I can't remember the name of the restaurant now, because I was the one that recommended it to the Ontario NDP to use, because I grew up right up the street from that, and the Toronto Delta East is actually in Scarborough Agincourt, which was the riding that I grew up in, and my mom is still in as well too. But then that was fun, because I remember after that, a bunch of us, and including people that I had only met for the first time, we all went for Hakka food after, and it was after the bar as well too that we were at. So that was just really really cool. But I also remember in convention in 2018 was also the first time I met so many federal candidates, because at that point a whole bunch of them had been nominated at that point, even though it was a provincial convention. I just remember it was so cool to see all of these people that I was like really inspired by and really excited that they were running as candidates, and it made me it really lit a fire under me to be like, yeah, these are the kinds of people that I am inspired by, and I want to see in office, and I want to stand with them in the House of Commons to fight for the same things that they are, and that was really cool to meet some really awesome people like Shauna Lukowitz that I would never have met otherwise, or Yuxim Wan from Thunder Bay. Like I've been to Thunder Bay once, and I don't know when I'll ever be able to go back again. And it was a chance to get and meet with meet her, so that was super cool.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm just reading all the all
We're
the little
reminiscing
things.
in the chat.
Reminiscing. Yeah. I was a candidate in 2018. I don't know if I'm going to run again. I probably won't run again this time. I think there are lots of candidates who can step up to beat Dave Smith, the MPP for Peterborough Kawartha, who has all the personality of a rotten bag of potatoes. And I think
That's
that
kind.
any day, well,
It's after 10, Sean. You can swear.
I'm always a kind person, but yeah, there are a lot of folks who want to run in Peterborough Kawartha, and really Peterborough Kawartha is the riding to win. Peterborough Kawartha, Oshawa, and Durham are definitely in target sites for the ONDP. If we're going to win government, that's where we're going to go. Dave Smith came to my apartment door. Jesse, was he your landlord? Dave Smith is a real interesting character, and I shouldn't say any more unless we slide into libel and slander. Dave doesn't like me either, but we get along in day to day because we deal with professional government things together quite a bit. Yes. Okay. So at this point, it was really great to see where everyone was coming from. I think at this point, I'm going to go around to closing remarks. I'd like to start with Jessa, who again, Jessa is a great friend of the show and a good comrade who's running for the president of the NDP. I believe the vote is tomorrow for delegates. So again, want to give you some space and wish you all the best.
Thank you. I'm going to use my space to shout out to the disabled community that is persevering through this convention. I see you. I'm fighting with you. I apologize that this is such a battle. Jay, I particularly see you and hear you, and I hope that emergency resolution gets to the floor. We can do so much better. We will do so much better because I think you guys have been extremely bold and courageous getting on that mic. And I know the points of order were tough, but you needed to be heard and you weren't. I can't, I'm not going to say I understand. I hear you one more time because I know you've heard that so many times. So keep fighting. We fight along with you. And I hopefully we'll see some improvements tomorrow, but we will see improvements how our party treats our disabled siblings, for sure. I won't rest until we do.
Thank you for that, Jessa. Maybe over to Brandon Tozzo. Closing remarks.
Keep on rocking the free world and fuck the police.
Hell yeah.
No, sorry, too much. Okay, in all seriousness though, like I know that people get discouraged, but this is an awesome time to be a leftist. Like really, this is. We step up to the plate. We've got great ideas. We are a growing party. We keep gaining in popularity. Our ideas are getting out there. Like I started my life in politics under protesting Mike Harris, and I have never seen the left this outraged, this passionate, this full of energy. Like to all you candidates who want to run. Now's the fucking time to do it. To all the people who are out there getting involved in politics, do it. You'll do great. I'm not. Sorry guys. But this is really like more than any other time. My God, be active. Be out there. It is such a great time to be at the table. Like what a time to be alive. Albeit in a pandemic, but it's just our ideas are really we're gonna shape Canada for a generation. Trust me.
Can I get a hell yeah in the chat? I think it's inappropriate to get a hell yeah. Like it's so true. Like I think that it is such a bright thing to move forward to. And we've got pieces of positivity. We've got great people who are running for president. We've got great candidates. We got great people like Brandon Tozzo. We got great people like Brandon Amyot. We got great people like Sean Conway and Angieszka Mlynarz. We've got great people all over the place. It's a hell yeah in the chat, folks, because it is great. We passed a Palestine Resolution today at a federal NDP convention. That is a huge hell yeah for the left of this party. But even just the party itself, it's not the left of this party, because now the majority of the party believes in that. So it's leftist unity. It's happening, y'all. It is happening. Maybe a little bit, but it is happening. Just really quiet. Brian Chang, last thoughts before we say goodnight.
Thanks so much for this uplifting bit. It's been so isolating the last couple days into having everybody together in one place talking about this, and just being honest and putting our feelings on the tables and being truthful about how we're feeling and how upset we are and whatnot. That's empowering, because this is exactly the type of conversations that we need to have, and the conversations that aren't happening elsewhere and aren't happening in politics and aren't happening. This is the stuff. And when we can do this, I think it's uplifting for me, and I feel very empowered by everybody. And now I am ready to deal with tomorrow and what may come. So thank you all very much.
Shailene, can we hear from you?
Yes, you can. I just want to say thank you so much, as always, Sean, for inviting us, creating space for us. It's a safe space, it is an empowering space, and it is a space of recharging. So I appreciate you and what you do. I appreciate everyone who has joined us tonight on this panel, but then also in the live stream chat. You are all so incredibly amazing. And I knew that no matter what happened today, I was going to be fine by the end of the day because of this. So I would just repeat that no matter what happens tomorrow, we have community, we have each other, we can tap in, channel that emotion, channel that anger, channel that drive, plug in and let's create a movement. That's what we are. Power back to the people. Let's go.
And again, I can request another hell yeah, because it's so true. We were spoiled for choice for great people running for positions. Everyone here is amazing. We've had great guests on tonight. Jessa, DJ, Brandon, Shailene, other Brandon, Brian, myself, Aggie. We've had great people on. It's a really, really exciting time. Let's recharge ourselves. Let's move into this final day of convention. Let's get some fucking shit done for once and actually pass some policy. We'll elect some cool people. It looks like we got a pretty good federal executive that's going to be able to move forward. And remember that your federal executive officers should be able to make determinations on policies that were submitted to the prioritization that were not debated over the weekend. So reach out to your federal representatives. Myself as one. I'm only going to speak to any regarding Indigenous peoples, but I'm happy to entertain any of the other ones as well. So let's fucking do it. Is it after 10 fucking clock, Sean? You fucking right it is, Jay. It's after 10 fucking clock. So I've been holding it back all day. I've been in a really starchy convention all day. So I've been holding it back and just saying fuck in front of a screen that doesn't get to hear me talk. If you've ever seen me at provincial council, you'll usually see me as a person that's making circles around the room and chain smoking every 20 minutes. But that's just the way it is. Thanks so much, everyone. I think that I'm going to host a stream tomorrow night after this is all done. Everyone who's here tonight is, of course, welcome back on. I'll touch base with everyone by text tomorrow. But let's maybe do this again tomorrow night, because it might be great to touch base on how things went by. And I think that that's a good thing too, that will, even if things go really, 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 really bad tomorrow, at least we can talk it all out and be in a really good place together, because I hope that everyone listening tonight is having a good time and feeling good and positive, because there are positive things that happens when New Democrats get together. It does not matter the format, New Democrats get together and we're hanging out, we have a great time. And that is a fundamental rule. So let's do that. Let's say good night, and we'll say so long. If I don't see you tomorrow, I'll see you next Saturday night. This is Brave New North. Please press like, please press subscribe, and we'll see you the next time. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.